All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to our eDiscovery Day conversation. Today, my good friend David and I are just really going to be talking about things that trainers and recruiters talk about, talking about your education options and ways that you can advance your career in eDiscovery. Whether you're new at this, thinking about getting involved, or you've been in the eDiscovery business as long as we have, there will be something for you today as we talk through all the different things that come up in a discussion about careers, really. So if you ever wanted to know what it was like to be a fly on the wall with a trainer and a recruiter in the litigation technology or eDiscovery industry, now's your chance. So enjoy. David, tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, thank you, Erika. Hello, everyone. Hope you're all having a great day. My name's David Netzer, and I'm an executive recruiter. I've been recruiting for a little over 20 years, and I've actually been recruiting within the eDiscovery space and litigation support technology for about 15 years. And I basically place all types of people within the eDiscovery realm, whether they're salespeople, project managers, litigation support managers, all types of operations, sales, marketing, and I do a lot of placements of more technical people that work in either law firms or vendors, and they have a lot of questions. They're always looking to improve their resume, asking how they can get noticed, what can they do in order to kind of advance in their current position with their current organization, or if they're looking for a new opportunity. They'd like to know how they can get noticed. So we're going to discuss ways that people at legal service vendors, law firms, or finding positions in in-house counsel, what they could do. And Erika's the expert in the actual technology. So I have a kind of a functional knowledge of what hiring managers are seeking. And we're going to kind of combine our resources, and Erika will let you know how you can actually implement some of these ideas and build your resume and really land that job that you're looking for. And that's about it. So Erika, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and we'll go from there.
Thanks a lot, David. And it's really great and a pleasure to be hanging out with you this afternoon to talk through all of this. It's a question I get asked all the time, but I'm not a recruiter. So I can tell you what technology, what workflows and things are important, but from the ear to the ground and what hiring managers are looking for, I'm glad that you were able to join me today for this. I've been in the industry now, 25 years. As we were preparing for this, I did the math and I said, oh my gosh, I've been doing this. I've been at this since 1995. Wow. When I graduated from college and decided not to go to law school. And so I have a varied experience. I've been everything from a database analyst, building databases from scratch, to project manager, but all in litigation. So I was around when we were just scanning paper to image and then transitioning to what do we do with all these emails? My first eDiscovery project, we printed all the emails out, which was absolutely insane. We had a bank of computers and a bank of people just clicking print on the emails that looked important, and then we bait stamped them. I mean, my goodness. But back then it was so expensive to deal with data, literally $2,500 a gigabyte. I mean, it was insane. So I've been around that long. But in that, I have done everything from consulting to working with teams, doing sales training, sales teams, training attorney teams and paralegal teams. I teach a continuing ed course at a local university for paralegals as part of their paralegal program, introducing them to eDiscovery. And what else have I done? Oh, and many of you probably remember me from the time that I spent at LitWorks providing training for 5 years there.
That's how we know each other.
Yeah, that's how you and I met. And that was a load of fun. And what I said back then and what I still say now is the tools are not as important as the process. If you understand the process, you can figure out the tools, because the tools change. The tools will change but the workflow really doesn't. Litigation hasn't changed in 200 years. And so the thing that we have to always remember is that, like I said, the tools are not as important as the process. So let's talk about what we can do here. What does it take for somebody to get going? What's something that you think that we should start with?
Well, so the topics that I've come up with are kind of based on a lot of the questions that I typically get from people when I'm actually interviewing them. I interview candidates all day long, and the purpose of the interviews is obviously for me to find out about what they've done, what their skills are from a functional and a technical standpoint, so that I can determine if they're a fit for a position for one of my clients, and also, try to give them some advice. Sometimes, many times, they ask me questions, what can I do? How does my resume look? How do I get this kind of job? And so I'm happy to have this opportunity, because I can kind of let you know what some of these questions are, and then you can address them and give some actual real world advice and some specific action items that people can take in order to accomplish their goals.
Sure.
So one of the most frequently asked topics is certifications with respect to eDiscovery. A lot of candidates want to know, do hiring managers really require these certifications? If they put a specific certification on a job description, is it would be something that would be nice to have, or is it a specific requirement? And if so, what are the different certifications? Which ones are best? Which ones might not be so good? And if I'm looking in a general, just in a general professional development standpoint, what are the must-have certifications that I really should just go out and get that everyone should have? So.
Okay. Well, that's a really good question, and it's one that I get as a trainer also when I go in to provide training for teams or in the educational world when I'm teaching the continuing ed courses. Many of you, like I said, I used to teach a certification course, but let's be honest, it was run by a vendor. So they had a vested interest in making sure that they had an educated consumer. The customer, we were able to sell more services if the customer understood why they needed them. And that was kind of the beginning of the certification process in the eDiscovery world, in litigation support, because a lot of service providers realized that sometimes they were talking to folks who were not as technology savvy as they wanted them to be, and they really needed to make sure that they understood. When I was doing that, though, I really tried to make it as balanced and objective as possible. And so sometimes I'd risk having sales guys upset with me because I failed their customer. Listen, if you didn't know where to stick the thumb drive in your laptop on Monday, you were not an eDiscovery expert or going to be an eDiscovery expert by Friday. That was just unrealistic. But we did try, and we focused on workflow and focused on processes. So the history of having certification in this field goes back many years, 15 years actually. But what we're fortunate enough to have now is we have options. The ACEDS option is the one that I believe is the #1 certification that I've seen out there with folks. And it's
definitely the one you see the most.
Yeah, it's the one that you see the most. But there's another certification that's offered by Michael Arkfeld and his group at eDiscovery Education Center. And I believe it's based out of Arizona. And so at the eDiscovery Education Center, they have online resources. And a few years back, Ralph Losey had the eDiscovery training program, but that is now a free service. It's no longer a certification, and it was really targeted towards attorneys because he was teaching eDiscovery at the law school level. And so, but now in 2020, you have plenty of law schools that cover eDiscovery, have an eDiscovery course. Many paralegal schools, like the one that I teach at, have an eDiscovery course. So when it comes to certification, my theory is this. If you have less than 5 years of experience in eDiscovery, you probably want to invest in training and certification because you don't have the job or work experience to demonstrate your knowledge. But if you have more than 5 years of experience, then I would still want to invest in a certification like ACEDS or the ArcFeld's certification program, but I would look at how to demonstrate other skills that I might have, like going for a project management certification instead of specifically eDiscovery. Because if you've been in litigation or eDiscovery for more than 5 years, you understand the workflow. So you don't need to, on your resume, in my opinion, prove that you understand litigation workflow, but you do need to prove that you know how to manage a project. That you do need to prove that you know how to document properly so that you are able to provide a defensible project workflow for your case team or for your client. And so just to kind of sum that up, if you have less than 5 years of eDiscovery or litigation experience, I would go definitely with an eDiscovery certification. I would invest in that. If you have more than 5 years experience in the eDiscovery or litigation technology world, then I would invest in a project management certification. And you can find those with 5-day boot camps. There's plenty that are online right now. Most of your local colleges or universities have a class that you can do an executive certification for. If you can show on your resume that you've taken classes and participated in furthering your education around the things that are important to your job as an eDiscovery professional, I think that says a lot for you.
Okay. Well, that's definitely very useful information. I think a lot of our viewers should find that very helpful. Thank you for that. So one of the other topics that a lot of people ask me about is ongoing professional development, whether they are perhaps just looking to get into legal technology. Maybe someone's a paralegal, but in a transactional firm, they're looking to get into litigation. They're wondering what are the best ways to pick up these new skills. And sometimes these people are working in a position where they can't really take a lot of extra time to pick up these skills while they're working, and they can't have the opportunity to transfer over to the litigation or legal tech department unless they have these skills, but they're too busy to actually add these skills with work. So what are some of the ways that you would suggest that these people can do, maybe while they're working, if they have resources that they can utilize within their company, or maybe taking some classes or taking some of their personal time on nights and weekends to really develop themselves professionally?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm one of those folks that I really believe in lifelong learning. I'm a total nerd when it comes to lifelong learning, and I enjoy learning new things. And that was one of the things that I loved about litigation, because every new case, every new project, I was genuinely interested in what did our client do? And why did they do it? And what was their business model? And then what caused the problem that they were in litigation in the first place? That's interesting. And so really you have to start with an attitude of being a lifelong learner, that you want to learn new skills to continue or further your career or pivot your career in a different direction if you're changing from being a transactional paralegal to going to litigation. So the best way to me is to start with the free training that's often offered by the software providers. So what software are you currently using at your firm, or what software does your litigation team at your firm currently use? Go to that website, see what training they have. You can spend literally 15, 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes a day learning something new with a program that you already have just by simply watching a video. Get on the mailing list of some of the top vendors that are out there. There's a new webinar offered every week. I know we're excited about eDiscovery Day because it's like mad rush for all these webinars, all these on-demand webinars. But really, there's webinars every week. Somebody is offering a webinar every week. If you do a simple search on Google for eDiscovery, that's a great starting point. Whatever pops up, start there. Learn the language, learn the terminology, and I'll mention some websites a little bit later that I recommend. But I would start with the free training offered by vendors and service providers, those free webinars. Get on the mailing lists so that you'll be alerted to that lunch and learn. And you can eat your lunch. I mean, many of us already eat our lunch at our desk. So you may as well take that time and use it to learn, or it's on demand, even if you sign up for it. If you can't watch it in real time, these days, most conferences or webinars are offered where they'll say it's live at 1 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern. But if you can't watch it at 1 o'clock in the afternoon because you're busy, well, because you registered, they'll still send you a link for the replay. Right. So you can always go back and do that, or just do a search on YouTube for eDiscovery, and you will find a lot of older webinars that cover some of the basic topics. And even if the webinar is as old as 5 or 8 years, it's still, the tools are not as important as the process. The workflow is still there, and that's still good information. The vocabulary, the terminology, becoming familiar with how and why someone would use the technology. And then the other thing I would recommend, beyond just a basic search on the internet, is ask your manager or boss if there's funds available in the training budget for this year. Most companies and law firms have a training budget. And many times we don't take advantage of it because we're too busy, or we make ourselves too busy because, of course, you know, the bottom line is what matters.
Don't some of the subscriptions of the different software and applications, don't those actually come with training hours that
yes,
you can include sending a trainer out, or you know, small classes that maybe aren't always taken advantage of?
Yeah, they do. Most of the time when you buy software, when I was doing software sales years ago with iConnect, I doubled as salesperson, consultant, and trainer. So that was triple. But I would come out and do training, but I would also do training over the internet. I would do it as a webinar. I'd log into WebEx and I would sit with someone and do a screen share and walk them through. And so that's something that's often included, or it's part of the package. It may not have been necessarily included, but it's always offered as part of the package. And so finding out if that resource is available is a great way to learn new things. Your firm has subscriptions to not only to the different litigation software programs out there, but they may also have a deal with a local college or university for additional executive style training, where it's it's a shortened semester, maybe 3 weeks instead of 6, or 8 weeks instead of 16, where you can go and your firm will pay for a class on project management for you, or pay for a class on database management if that's something that you're interested in, or eDiscovery if the school offers it. So those are things that you can always look into, and as well as the training that's available on the certification sites like ACED's site on their certification package, Michael Arfeld's program at EDEC, and also Ralph Losey's program, which is still sitting out there for free now at eDiscoveryteamtraining.com. And so that's one of the ways that you can take advantage of ongoing professional development, either formally or informally. And I'll tell you right now, because a lot of us are working from home more than we usually do, instead of binging on Netflix, you could sit and literally just watch a few eDiscovery videos. Most of them aren't more than 30 minutes to an hour long. And even if it's a talk from a conference in the past, it's still useful information.
Absolutely. And then just out of curiosity, what would be some of the programs or types of programs that you would recommend if someone were going to pay for it out of their own pocket? Where would a candidate maybe get the most bang for their buck?
I think right now, probably the ACED's program for the eDiscovery certification, working towards that, or Arfeld's program. They have shorter webinars, but ACED's also offers webinars on their site. The eDiscovery reference model website offers classes or webinars on various topics. And so I think from a bang for your buck, that's definitely, those are all definitely really good resources.
Sorry, on our on my website, actually at legaltechtalent.com, we provide a news and resources tab. If you click on there, there's an event calendar that pops up, and we try to list a lot of free resources. So there's webinars that are scheduled for specific times, and as you said, you can usually register and then receive a copy of it to watch at any time. And then there's a lot of other resources that are listed on there that you can watch at any time. And that'll kind of give you a good starting point of finding out who's offering these. And then, once you register, you get on the email list and they send you emails, and you've got a free source of continuing education.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that your site, what you can do with that event list is simply print it out and pin it to your bulletin board at your desk, and be able to kind of say, okay, this I can work into my schedule, or just as a reminder. I mean, I'm not a big fan of wasting paper, certainly, but I think it helps sometimes to have that reminder when you have some downtime for 30 minutes. Maybe a meeting got pushed back that you were planning and preparing for. Rather than starting on another project, you could look at that list and say, wait, do I have anything today that I could be looking at? And so definitely checking out your website at Legal Tech Talent Network to make sure that you haven't missed an event or missed an opportunity to engage in learning. And that's really what lifelong learning looks like. It's like, what can I learn today? Let me not go through this day and not learn something new. So
absolutely. Okay. Well, that's also a lot of good information. One of the other topics I get is when people are looking to kind of take that next step in their career and get into some type of a management or administrative role where they're going to be overseeing people, maybe not necessarily managing them. Mm-hmm. They'd like to know, when they're looking to be a hiring manager and they're maybe not a super technical person, they want to know, can I move into this type of a management role without having the technical background? So just kind of wondering, how much technical knowledge do they really need in order to manage technical people?
Well, I think it's also part of the same question that we just had about where to find professional development resources. I would add to that there's books that you can get to have on your shelf as a reference. So one of the books that I actually teach from is Project Management and Electronic Discovery: An Introduction to Core Principles of Legal Project Management and Leadership in eDiscovery, which is a really long title, but Michael Quartataro wrote the book. And years ago, I had some of the folks on his team when he was in a law firm environment come through my program at LitWorks. And so it's someone that I trust as far as a knowledgeable source, but it's a great book, and it's a great reference book. It's not something you want to sit down and try to read cover to cover, but it is something that if I'm a hiring manager or I'm someone looking to move into a management role, then I definitely want to invest in actual books. There's another book that's new, relatively new, that I saw on Amazon. It's eDiscovery: An Introduction to Digital Evidence by Amelia Phillips. And I think there's a couple of other authors listed there. But every so often, new books come out. But a tried and true one that's actually still available on Amazon is eDiscovery for Dummies. Yes, somebody wrote a For Dummies book for eDiscovery eons ago. But as far as your basic vocabulary, basic workflow, basic understanding, it's still a really great text. And those are books that you can have handy as both a hiring manager to kind of look up information, or if you need a quick refresher before going on a interview to talk with someone. I think those are really useful. Another way to pick up new skills, as we said before, the educational marketing type of videos or webinars from service providers, whether it's a software service provider or it's a technology services service provider, watching their videos, going on YouTube and doing a couple of searches just to familiarize yourself with the terminology. And if you're looking for a role that's very technical, then I would look at lynda.com or go to your local library's website for a for access for free. Oftentimes, I know ours does where I live, to be able to get an idea of what are some of the things that I should understand about technology today. What are the common things? If there's a word or something on their resume I don't recognize, or something in the job description that's been handed to me to interview for that I don't really recognize, I can take a 30-minute or 15-minute quick course to kind of get an understanding of what it is that I need to know.
That was actually something that came up when I was speaking with the candidate the other day. They were looking at getting into a higher position than where they were currently, and part of that job was actually coming up with the job descriptions for new jobs that were opening up, because technology changes all the time, and if someone has a good functional background and knowledge of the litigation process but doesn't really understand all the technology, how do they even know how to write a job description for someone to do things that they don't really even know what they're doing as far as the technology goes?
So my recommendation for that, because I've been in that boat before, it was one of my consulting, I guess, jobs that I did when I was at DTI years ago, was to help clients come up with that job description. What I would do is just simply look at other job descriptions, go to the job boards, the popular job boards, and type in litigation jobs and see what comes up. It might be attorneys, might be paralegals, or you might also pull up a technology position.
Could look at a competitor's website too for their open jobs, especially if it's a little larger company that may have more specialized positions. So.
Definitely. But if you're in a smaller environment, I'm glad you mentioned a larger company versus smaller company. If you're in a smaller environment, also remember, as I said before, the tools aren't as important as the process. If someone comes along and their resume says they've used tool A for the last 2 or 3 years, and your firm or your company uses tool B, think of it like the difference between a Honda and a Ford. I can get in either one and drive that car to get to where I need to go. But there may be features, there may be small things that I'm not really sure about. You can always train a new hire on the technology that you specifically use a lot easier than you can train them on trying to understand the basic why of what it is that you're doing. And it kind of goes both ways. You can hire for the technology and the skills, or you can hire someone who has the potential, who's a go-getter and demonstrates that willingness to learn on the job. And I think that that's something that hiring managers have to balance when they're looking for folks in the e-discovery industry, because as large as our industry is today, compared to what it was 20 years ago, 15 years ago, we are still a very small vertical within the overall IT industry. I very rarely meet people who from outside the industry who have even heard of electronic discovery. When you say there's like a thing of electronic discovery, they go, what is that? And
my father's a retired attorney. He doesn't even understand what it is. He's up there in age and kind of got out of the workforce before computers became commonplace, and he doesn't even understand it. He's an attorney.
Yeah. It really, once I start breaking it down and explaining to them all the different ways, for example, in my class recently, I had a whole slide up of all the ways that we leave a technology trail, from the Ring doorbell camera at your front door, to your text messages, to your key card at the office, tracking your movement throughout the building. There's a lot of things that come up in litigation, come up in lawsuits that, that really you have to know what to do with it when it shows up. So having some basic technology skills is important for hiring managers if they are hiring for an e-discovery position or for a technology position. Watching a 10-minute video about what is project management in general helps with communicating with someone about project management. So at least you know some of the terminology, not to jump in and start asking them questions about work breakdown structure, but to be a little bit more understanding when they explain to you how their last project went. what were some
Right.
things that you feel like you could have done better on your last project, to have context for what to do with that information. Definitely. So yeah, reading job postings, visiting websites like Legal Tech Talent Network to find out what's going on in the industry, looking for eDiscovery news online and other websites, looking at other job postings and determining what you don't understand, and then finding somebody to ask those questions. So definitely all of that.
Another topic that comes up frequently is, what are the most important skills needed in order to break into or advance into the eDiscovery field, whether you're in a law firm in-house or with a consulting firm or a legal vendor? If a candidate would like to take their career to the next level, what should they learn? It might not even necessarily be a technical skill, or, all technical stuff. And they just want to know, what should I learn? What should I do? How do I take it to the next level?
Yeah, those are great. That's a really great question. So again, I would pull up job postings. I'd go to websites that have job postings, and I'd look at a few of them and say, well, what are the skills that I don't have that are on these job descriptions? Is it a software program that I've never heard of that a firm is looking for? Just because you haven't heard of it doesn't mean that it's not necessarily popular, or it could be something that nobody's using but that firm. But if you want to apply for that job, at least go and find that software program's website and see if you can find a video on it, to kind of get an idea of what does the interface look like. Request a software.
From an executive recruiting standpoint, that is a great way to get a job, especially if it's a new emerging type of technology or a software application that certain companies are adopting, and they need someone who knows how to do it, and they might pay just about any amount of money to find someone. So that's a very good point. Keeping an eye on those new technologies.
Yeah, definitely on the cutting edge ones. And it's not hard to find, to get a software demo. So reading job postings, looking for what's, cutting edge that someone might be willing to pay for, getting a software demo, trying to understand their interface, and then be able to compare it to what you already know. If you are well-versed in relativity, but that's not the tool that this job posting is looking for, they're looking for something else, then go look up that other thing and try to figure out, well, what are the differences, and how can I position what I already know about relativity to show and demonstrate that I'm still qualified to take that role, even though I'm not necessarily familiar or certified or trained in that particular software package. So identifying what's missing, doing software demos, talking to salespeople, just talking shop, having somebody to talk to, doing a practice interview. I'm a big fan of practice interviews. Go for that job position, apply for it, even if maybe I'm so not qualified for it, but they might call you back. And if they do, talk to them about what's important. Practice selling yourself and seeing if that might still work out, because they may not get the person that they're looking for. They may have a pie in the sky laundry list of what it is, their skill sets that they're looking for, but they may not have the money to match what they're looking for. In which case,
but they may have that job coming up in a couple of weeks that they know is going to open up, and they might realize, well, this person's not the right fit for this position, but I have a rec opening up in 2 weeks, and he or she would be fantastic.
Exactly. And so really it's all about proactively improving your resume, demonstrating that even if it's not a class where you get a piece of paper or certificate that says that I completed this class on eDiscovery, you can still write on your resume that you took a class online on eDiscovery and date it on November 18th. I took this class, and it was a 2-hour class. That's significant. I think that helps your resume to show that you are a lifelong learner, that you're someone who will, on your own time, still make sure that you are worthy of the position that you're going after. So proactively improving your resume, looking at job postings to identify what's missing from your own skill set, reading what what other employers are looking for, and practice interviewing. And then the other thing too, when it comes to practicing interviewing and updating your resume, and David, tell me what you think on this one, because as a recruiter, should people stay away from using acronyms and certain terminology or unique terms? How does that work for folks on the resume process?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, because I run into this a lot, especially with people who don't have a lot of experience working for different organizations. Say someone was in a particular firm for many years, or especially with the technology companies, they use all kinds of acronyms. And they even use, they have job titles and they use an acronym or initials for the job title. So sometimes I'm interviewing a candidate and they say, well, I was a PE working on the ABC and the, XYZ. And I say, well, that's great, but I don't really know what you're talking about. I don't say it exactly like that. But if I don't know, then that means that hiring managers outside of their organization won't really know what they're talking about either. So it's best to have a knowledge of what the industry terminology, whether it's legal, eDiscovery, or just technology or legal terminology in general, because you have to use terms that make sense and are easily understood by the people that are listening to you. Mm-hmm. It's a good way to get your point across, and to also, it makes you come across as a bit inexperienced if you don't have the insight to realize that some of these terms that you may be using aren't recognized outside of your company. That's definitely, and building on what you had mentioned about taking classes and building the resume, a lot of times people forget to actually put the names of these technologies on their resume. And we know that eDiscovery is basically searching for terms. Well, that's what recruiters and hiring managers do when they're looking for resumes, or even if they're sent a resume. There's a lot of studies out there, but hiring managers or recruiters typically look at a resume for about 2 to 3 seconds. And if they don't see a couple of the words on the first page that they're looking for, they move on to the next. So if you've taken classes on certain types of technology, put them on your resume so that, one, they can be seen, and two, they can come up in the search engines, and not only in the resume databases on just the general internet that everyone searches for, but these also end up in the applicant tracking systems of these companies. So your resume may actually be in a database of a company, and they might search for a specific term 2 years later and give you a call and say, hey, we have this position. Are you possibly available and interested?
Yeah, so and it's a long cycle when it comes to, in the sales world, we call it a sales cycle. It could be 3 to 6 months from the time that you make initial contact or make the sale and close the deal. But the same thing happens when it comes to interviewing for a job. A lot of times firms are not really in a rush to fill a position. And so it might take 6 months from the time your resume is submitted to the time that they really finally make a decision on you as an applicant, or they may just leave you in there in limbo. And like you said, David, it's a really great point. 2 years later, circle back and go, oh yeah, now we need this person or somebody who can do X. And that makes, that's a huge, huge difference. And so it's something that when we think about what's on our resume, making sure we have the right terms, making sure that we don't speak in acronyms or specific lingo that is only unique to the company, the last company that we were at. All of that seems to matter. So that's really good information.
Absolutely. And what you had mentioned, practice interviewing, even if you're not really looking for a new opportunity, you never know when you may be. I mean, as we just saw with all these COVID layoffs, a couple rounds of them, people lose their jobs, companies are sold, things happen. And if you haven't interviewed in 10 years, and you find yourself in a position where you need to find a job, you're going to find yourself behind the 8 ball. And,
Yes.
it's good to get out there. And I always tell people, just because you're applying for a position or submitting a resume or having a conversation with a hiring manager or a recruiter, it doesn't mean you're leaving your job. It means, you're just kind of seeing what's out there. And a lot of times you might find, hey, I'm really happy where I am. I don't want to go anywhere. But without knowing what else is out there, it's difficult to know if you're really satisfied and happy where you are. So there's a lot of reasons to do it.
Yeah. And so from the standpoint of interviewing practice, it also gives you an idea of what kind of jobs are out there, what people are looking for. And you might, to your point, David, might find that the job that you have, you want to keep. But one of the things that I think firms miss this opportunity a lot of times is that they are focused on hiring for specific technology skills. Like they need someone who knows how to use relativity. I get calls about that all the time from folks saying, hey, do you know anybody that can do project management and do, and support relativity? I'm like, well, maybe, but does it have to be relativity? I mean, is it, no, this client absolutely wants relativity. Okay, well, I think that's a missed opportunity because you can train somebody on relativity. They can spend the first week they're in the office learning relativity, just from Relativity's website, from Kcura's website. Right. But what ends up happening is that person that would have otherwise been a really good fit, that understands the why, understands the workflow of litigation, has great communication skills, they are overlooked because maybe they don't have that particular software program. So to the person who is out looking for what skills they need to advance their career, if you look and see relativity over and over and over, and I'm just using that as an example, right, on job postings, then maybe it's worthwhile going to their website and watching some of their videos so that you can match your knowledge about another software program to the things that relativity does. Because it's in an ideal situation, a company will want to train people or professionally develop their teams so well that they're qualified to leave and go to another company. But we also are looking for them to treat them so well that they don't want to. And so if you're a manager and you find that your team is off looking for new jobs, well, then you have to ask yourself, have I made it worth their while to stay here also? Right. And that's the other challenge that I think firms have to consider. There's a lot of people who've been laid off in this season, but we'll find that there will be a ramp up when this season is over, and we'll go back into that time of scarcity again, where you can't find anybody who's skilled and understands the workflow, which is a good thing, I guess, for folks, because then they'll get paid better. But it's
well, explain from a training standpoint, and this would be good for job seekers or hiring managers, when you're looking for someone who knows a specific software program, for instance. A lot of them do the exact same thing. I mean, how much easier is it to train someone to use software B if they already know software A that does the same thing versus someone who doesn't know how to use software A at all? I mean, aren't some of them so similar that you really could just kind of learn the differences? And
Oh, yeah. I think it's easier to train someone who already understands the basics of one software program to be able to bring them up to speed on the second one, because they understand the why behind the what, than it is for someone who's completely green and you have to completely start from scratch. But what I would also say is that it also matters from a training standpoint. And all these years that I've been training, your attitude about learning a new software program. I remember folks that back when Summation and Concordance were the top two software programs, there were folks who, I mean, you would have thought there was a Summation cult out there, that they were gung-ho, only in summations, only do this. And there was a group of folks that were the same way when I first got started in litigation about WordPerfect. It was WordPerfect. But then when everything went to Windows and we all got switched over to Word, word perfect kind of died off, and you had a bunch of hurt, broken-hearted folks. And the same thing, I've seen that over the years with litigation technology. Folks get stuck on the software program. Sometimes I call it the first love syndrome. You know, that's the one I learned first. That's the one I only want to ever use. And everything else is substandard, you know, in comparison. I think we have to make sure for software training to be successful that we have the right attitude about the tool that we're using. It's a tool. It's not make or break. Don't fall in love with it. New tools come out all the time. And
Right.
And right now the tool, and for the last several years, the tool that is most popular is relativity. But there are other really great tools that are out there. iConnect has a great tool, and you have folks that are really gung-ho about that tool. And so there's loyalty, there's preferences, but if you are job hunting from a training standpoint, learn as much as you can about whatever the top 5 tools happen to be. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, you might, and I've seen this happen too. Actually, it happened to me. I was hired by a law firm once, and in my job interview, they told me, yeah, we use this software X, and we see that you use this software and it's great. And we're so excited. And they've hired me, brought me on and everything. I get there, they had 1 litigation matter in software X, 25 matters in software Y.
Oh, wow.
So I'm sitting there going, now I have to learn this other software, which was fine because, again, that's just part of my personality. I like to learn. So I was like, well, cool. I get to learn something new. Right. But because I knew the other software, I was able to transition easily over. And so at the end of the day, if you know one, you know them all. The question is you hit the red button, the green button, the blue button. Is it a drop down or a checkbox, from one to the other? They all kind of do the same thing. And I've been on the sales side. I've been certified in a variety of different software applications over the years. They all kind of do the same thing. So it's
funny thing about that example is, going back to the point of why it's important to always be adding skills and learning as much as you can, because that job you got because you knew that one skill that you didn't even really need, but no one else had it. And it wasn't even really part of what you were doing on a day-to-day. So that's a perfect example of, how just taking 30 minutes out of your day, like you said, when you find a little bit of extra time and add a new skill and you put it on your resume, and it's going to pop up, and you never know, it might lead to an opportunity that wouldn't have opened up for you otherwise.
Yeah, that's so true. That is so very true.
You kind of touched on a few, but what are some good resources where people can go and find maybe lists of other resources that would help them in their professional development?
Definitely. I would start, because it has become the industry standard workflow, is the eDiscovery reference model. The EDRM site, I believe it's edrm.net, and I'll make sure it's in the comments or the description for the video. But the eDiscovery reference model website, it has the workflows for all of the different phases. I believe there's 9 phases. Most of us only deal in the middle 7. But if you are in a corporate environment, then you really have to sit down and read through and understand the information governance phase, all the way through the review phase. So you know what you're saving and why you're saving it. So that the attorneys can review it later. If you're in the law firm environment, understanding the production phase and working backwards to how do I get to the production requirements that my firm wants to use as a standard. When I teach, I talk about setting standards, creating a standard protocol for all of your cases so that you have a checklist that's consistent, so that when your attorneys are in front of the judge, you can say things like, this is how we normally do it, and therefore it's defensible because you already have all of your checks and balances, all of your documentation is consistent, as opposed to we do something different every time we get a new client. That doesn't go over well with the courts. So having that core knowledge, building on your core knowledge, it's set up kind of like a Wikipedia style site, but there's a ton of resources. And I like the graphics simply because it's great if I am and this is another reason why not to speak in acronyms on your interview, but also if you are trying to just move up the ladder within your own organization, within the organization that you're currently in, a government agency or a law firm or a service provider, corporate legal department, that you become the go-to person for knowledge. And so you can always send somebody a graphic with a workflow like what they have on the EDRM site to say, this is where we're at in the bigger picture. And
Right.
you talk from making sure that you care that everybody understands what's going on. And so when people speak with you, that's kind of how I got into training, because when people spoke with me, I cared that they understood what I was talking about.
Right.
And so the EDRM site, eDiscovery reference model, the
By the way, has grown backwards and forwards over the years, and
oh
it
yeah,
will continue to do so.
oh yeah, definitely, because the nuances and the information and the details continues to get updated. It continues to, but some of it hasn't changed in years. Production formats, that really hasn't changed much in years. What matters, what has changed is the volume. And I think that's something, the next big thing that we'll have to deal with is the volume of data, how we manage that, and how we make decisions about productions because of the volume of data. But any of the sites that we've already talked about, like the ACEDS or ArcFeld's eDiscovery Education Center, for certification, the eDiscovery training, Ralph Losey's site, those are resources. I'm a big fan of Extero's website. I know they're a software provider. They started with the legal hold part of the puzzle, and they've branched out since then. But they have, I think, hands down, one of the best resources for just good quality educational material. Granted, it's educational marketing, but they've, over the years, I have pointed students plenty of times over the years to their site, even if they have no use for their software. It's like, but if you want to learn something, check out their site. Then also you can check out news aggregate sites, where it's eDiscovery news, but there's not, maybe they're not really adding to the news, or not making the news, or not necessarily reporting the news, but kind of pulling together news articles that you otherwise might not see. And so sites like Today's General Counsel or eDiscovery Journal, even your site, David, has your blog posts have good information for folks that are just trying to have an idea of, how do I stay up to date on information in eDiscovery and what's going on in the news part of eDiscovery. Because every once in a while, there's not a big law case, litigation matter every day. Something doesn't jump off every day, but there's smaller cases that after a while, they become the precedents for the larger cases. And so it makes a difference. And so speaking of case law, another site that I like is eDiscoverylaw.com. On eDiscoverylaw.com, there's a search screen, and I'll share a picture of it in a second here, but there's a search screen where you can, where I point my students often to, if you want to find cases or read about cases where the Rule 26F conference was an issue, or sanctions were an issue, something really at the nitty gritty, you can do a search and find cases that are very specifically dealing with that. Let's see, what else did I write down?
As the industry is matured, those cases are what really tweak the changes in the technology.
Yeah, they do, because it's trial and error. The way that case law works for those of us who are non-lawyers is every time a case is tried, it tweaks something in the system and how we do the next case. And so it matters to go back and review. And so most folks, when they're taking eDiscovery classes in law school, they're really focused on the case law, because it's drawing a line of how did we get to here? Why did this happen? Well, it happened because of this case. Why did that happen? Well, it happened because of this case. This case set this precedent, and then this precedent led to this rule in the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. All of that kind of matters. And so staying up on the cases makes a difference. Another website that I like from a technology standpoint is techrepublic.com. If you are focused, remember earlier I said that if you have more than 5 years in eDiscovery experience, then I would consider getting a certification from a technology standpoint, like a project management, IT project management certification. And
Right.
doing that in following that part of the IT industry will help you understand what's coming down the pipe for litigation. I remember when we first started dealing with software that had artificial intelligence. They would talk about how you could, do the digital fingerprint and find the document that's similar to that other document. Well, now that's kind of normal. Everybody's program does that.
Right.
But a long time ago, that wasn't the case. But 5-6 years before that was popular in litigation, it was popular just in IT in general. They were already talking about it. So from a trend standpoint of what's coming next in technology, Tech Republic is a great website. It's been around for a long time. And so they have street cred, if you will, when it comes to technology. So that's something that I definitely recommend.
That's a great point, because the discovery process it's really the same thing it's always been, even since it was just paper and spoken words. But the technology has become such a big part of it that a lot of the trends from just general IT and general technology are really making a big impact on legal, because legal technology is it's just such a technology oriented thing now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One other thing I guess I would add to this, talking about, the good websites for learning best practices and staying abreast of what's going on in the industry, is something that I do to learn something new every day. That's kind of my mantra now. One is when I'm teaching, I talk about the tools are not as important as the process, because I'm focused on workflow and process. But in general, when I'm coaching, I talk about learn something new every day. How do you do that? Set up a Google alert. Have it send you an email on something as simple as the search term of eDiscovery, and see what shows up in your inbox. You can set it to be once a week or every day, but just going through and looking through what shows up. It could be new cases. Sometimes I've read some really interesting cases about companies that I've never heard of, or issues that have come up, and I go, I really never thought about that being an eDiscovery issue, because everybody's got email. Everybody has technology in their company. It doesn't matter what widget they make or what service that company provides, there's email, and therefore there's eDiscovery. So Google
Especially
Alert.
With COVID, with everyone working from home so quickly, the eDiscovery and information governance and security issues. I mean, there's a lot of things that are going to be coming up that we don't quite know how to handle yet, because we don't know what the problems are. So I think that's just great to kind of keep your finger on the pulse with the alerts and know what's going on.
And here's a great example. We're recording this using Zoom. When folks first went home last spring, when everybody went to work from home, all of a sudden Zoom blew up, right? So everybody was on Zoom. When you record in Zoom or in Microsoft Meeting or any of these other video conferencing applications, you have the option to record to your desktop or to the cloud, if you're the person that sets up the Zoom. And so you think about all the times that there are Zooms that are sitting in the cloud that no one has remembered that they recorded the meeting until litigation strikes and someone says, I was discriminated against in this meeting. And if you go and check the server, there's a recording sitting there from this date at this time. And no one thought to, because maybe no one set up an information governance policy about what to do with the recordings of all the video conferences.
That's a great point. Or on the flip side of that, at the beginning, when everyone was working from home, they might have been using their own device at home thought they were or were supposed to have recorded it to the cloud or somehow to the company service, but maybe inadvertently saved it onto their own personal laptop, and now that device becomes evidence in litigation.
And so, and there's all of these, all of these different IT policy issues. Another resource, though, to learn something new every day, besides the Google alert, is, and you can set it up not only for eDiscovery, you can set it up for project management, you can set it up for a particular software program you're interested in learning more about so that you're aware, or a particular company so that you're aware when they put out more information, if not, just from their mailing list. But your law firm, if you're in a law firm environment, your law librarian inside the firm may have resources available that you can have access to, even if you're not an attorney. A lot of times it's a site license to a particular website, like the American Bar Association's website. It's a site license or a corporate subscription to a magazine or a periodical that you can have access to, whether it's online or it is something that literally shows up in the mail at the office, and you can go to the law library and check it out.
Right.
So it definitely makes a difference if they, to make the effort to at least ask. They might tell you, no, you don't have, you're not the, your IT, and we don't make that available for IT personnel. And then if you find out it's a site license or it's the whole firm has access to it, I would go to my manager or my director and say, hey, in order for me to be effective in my job, I need access to this information. So what mountain can you move on my behalf to make this work? Right. And that works. I mean, for a while there, I had the firm paying for me, paying for my American Bar Association membership. Like I was not a member of the bar, but there was, I don't know, this is not the right term for it, and I can't think of it now, but something like a junior level card. So not an attorney, can't practice law, but I want the magazine to show up, on my desk. I want to be able to go on the website and get information, and some of those benefits. And I was able to get the firm to pay for that. Also, the software, and I think we kind of mentioned this before, another way to learn something new every day is the software your firm or your company has may come with on-demand training. It may come with training resources that you can watch on demand, or send an email and have the trainer that works for that company spend 30 minutes or an hour with you in a Zoom or Microsoft meeting or WebEx or whatever, and walk you through how to do some of the things that you're interested in. And while you have that person on the call, ask them some general industry questions. I mean, network.
And building on that from a professional development and career advancement standpoint, if you're the person in a firm or in a company that figures out that you have access to that information or to that training that you're not utilizing, you might actually be able to get a couple other people together and get them to do this training with you. And then, you're going above and beyond, and you're showing that, not only are you working on developing skills for yourself, but you're helping your colleagues, you're helping the company, and things like that are great for everyone. And
a team player goes a long way. Being a team player, caring about your colleagues, demonstrating that really does go a long way. You always, one of the things I've always told students over the years, and folks that mentees and folks that I've coached over the years, is to make sure that you learn people's names, not necessarily the company that they're with. And the reason is because there's a lot of movement in this industry. Most people don't stay with a company. If they're on the company side, they may not stay with a company for more than 2 or 3 years, for a whole host of reasons. It's not necessarily them. It could be the company. It's just the way that our industry works. But then you have people in law firms who've been there for 16, 17, 25 years, 30 years, and they don't move. So they're that person at that firm, and they become associated or synonymous with that firm until they go. So it matters to learn folks' names. Networking matters, but it matters to make sure that you have a good personal reputation that you leave behind, that people remember you well, think of you well, and even years later will say, oh yeah, when I worked with Erika, she was always nice. She's, and cheerful to work with, because you never know who is checking your references. You never know who is talking about you to someone else. And in an industry as small as ours, it definitely makes a difference. I mean, we've grown tremendously as an industry over the years. Billions upon billions of dollars are funneled through this industry, but it is still relatively small. As we said before, it's, most of my friends still don't really know what I do. So
Right.
it's something with technology and law firms, maybe,
Yeah, I start to explain what types of people I recruit, and they say, okay, I don't understand.
Yeah, you get that glazed over look. So it's
I love what you were saying about, kind of building. It's branding. You brand yourself as a subject matter expert, as someone who's good at what they do, and more to the point of the people not remembering the company name. With all the mergers and acquisitions and legal tech, I've spoken with people that took a position, and within 2 years, they've had 3-4 different business cards. They've worked for 3-4 different companies, and they haven't actually left their company. It's mergers and acquisitions, and no one's going to remember. They don't even remember themselves what company they work for at some point. But if they have established a good name for themselves, and also provide good service, and go to the networking events, as you mentioned, that person will be remembered. And when the time comes for them to be considered for a promotion or a new position, then they're the one who's gonna get the job.
Yeah, definitely. All of that matters. And I think it matters even more so now that we're finding ourselves spending most of our time on Zoom, in meetings online, and not really being able to go to trade shows the way we used to, and physically visit with one another. So it definitely is worthwhile to take advantage of the opportunities to network, to build your LinkedIn profile, to connect with folks, to practice interviewing, to work on your skills. Now is the time to do it, because it's not really safe to go anywhere. So you may as well spend an hour of your weekend every weekend learning something new.
Absolutely. Well, this has been fantastic. Thank you for your time, and I think that so much of the information you've been able to provide is going to be extremely useful for job seekers, hiring managers, and basically everyone in our industry. So, thank you.
Thank you, David, for your time too. This has been fun.
It has been.
This has been fun.